Welcome to Friday night's video in our Master Series. This is the 126th video in our Master Series and the 12th video in our group processing phase. So basically, I hope that I made that very clear when we were going through the compression and how we're just trying to sweeten things up, and the importance of the compression and the maximizer, in my opinion, and that using them in conjunction, it can really help you achieve a really nice sounding production, and taking into consideration doing things differently, possibly in different sections, to achieve the desired effect. So basically, we're at limiting. So we're basically right now, we've got this routed to the limiting bus. Now, when we come into the limiting bus, basically, this is a pretty simple concept. By now, all my major work is done, so I normally am going to go find the loudest part of the song. I'm going to go look at, I'm going to go listen to the production, and really, with my meters, try to figure out where the loudest part of the song is and then loop it in that area. Then what I'm going to normally do is, after I figure out where that's at, I'm going to come in there and I'm going to say, okay, this is the bus that's going to the limiting bus, from the compression bus that we did in the last video to this limiting bus. Correct? The compression bus, maximization bus to the limiting bus. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go find the loudest part of the song. I'm going to set this limiter at about -3 dB, and I'm going to have a pretty slow release on it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ride it up into it. So I'm going to go to this compression bus that's before the limiting bus, and I'm going to slowly bring it up into it until it starts hitting my limiter. Okay, so once it starts showing it's hitting here, and I start getting a little bit of limiting here, I don't want it to show on here that I'm getting about maybe 0.25 of limiting. It's using some compression to limit it. So at most, maybe about 0.25, because I should have taken any care of any spikes or anything like that. So I'll push it into the limiter from this bus previous up to about 0.25. Does that make sense? And so it's about reading about 0.25 of limiting compression on there, and I'm done. I'm good to go. I'm looking at my meters to see about where that's at, and then bringing that in there till I'm hitting about 0.25 dB of limiting compression with it set at about -3 dB, and I'm good to go. I'm done. I am done. It's hit this limiting bus. It's going from this limiting bus into here at this main bus set at -3 dB. I've turned off all my analysis tools. That's going to the main bus. Nothing's on the main bus, and I'm done. Now, basically what I'll do normally after that is I'll go to my limiting or my main bus out. I'll put a meter on there and make sure that it's basically hitting at about -3 dB. So you can give yourself more headroom if you want, but I recommend about -3 dB. That way you don't cut out any, when you mix down, you don't erase any lower decibel content, because that can be a problem. You don't want it too loud, so you have clipping problems and things like that. But you got 3 dB of headroom should be fine. So I'll go back in there and check to make sure that after I've done that I've got it's peaking out and it's hitting I'm looking at my level meter to make sure it's hitting about -3 dB, and I'll adjust my meter here until it's hitting right about -3 dB, whatever I have to adjust on my main out there, and I'm done. I'm good to go. My whole mix is done. So hopefully, if you've gone through my whole master series, that by now we've gone through everything and every stage of the production to where now you can do a mix down. So I don't know how your DAW works. We talked about at this point that you may want to do a mix down in your DAW to where you're going to go ahead and do a mix down of it or something like that. The song, export a mix down. And you might export a mix down and take it into something like RX6 if you're really finicky about it. Normally I wait until I get into mastering, but you can, if it's a little bit dirty and you want to clean it up a little bit, that at this point that you can go ahead and do a little bit of cleanup in something like RX6 if you really want to. Otherwise, most of the time at this point that I'm done. When I'm going to do an export and mix down, that there's a couple of different things in my song that I want to update the mastering file. So I'm going, after I've got everything set and I've went through everything, cleaned everything up, make sure everything's on that's supposed to be on, everything's off that's supposed to be off, and I've cleaned up the whole session, and I'm done. And I'll update the mastering file for putting into my mastering suite, which in my DAW, there's all kinds of different mastering ways to master, but update my mastering file in this DAW, and I'll export a MixDown that is to use for mastering. So it's a pretty simple concept, and basically you should be just done. You want to clean up your DAW, remove any unused files, anything like that. You can go into your cache, clean up your cache. Your cache might need to get cleaned up a little bit to where you've got, cache that you need to clean stuff that's unneeded out of there. And basically you should be good to go. You've got about -3 dB of headroom ready to go into mastering. You should be able to send that to a mastering engineer and he would be really happy with you. Now just remember that he might call you and say, I want some changes done to make this come out sound better, and that's okay. Or the producer might, or the band might, or whatever. Does that make sense? And be ready for that if you're working with other people's production. And sometimes if you're working with your own production, you're not mastering yourself, be ready to make adjustments that if you get advice from someone who is quote unquote mastering engineer that you trust. Now, in the next videos, we are going to go into doing the mastering ourselves. And that is a work of art unto itself, but the actual process is not that complicated once you understand what you're trying to do, so that you can make this production that sounds perfect and beautiful come out sounding as close as that in whatever desired format that you decide to format your production into, whether it's an AAF file, it's a VOG Orbis, it's an MP3, or whatever you might choose that you're trying to do, or whatever format you might be formatting into, whether it's lossless or lossy or whatever it might be, that it comes out sounding as close to this as possible. So it's a pretty simple concept. And plus we might be cleaning it up a little bit if we can. Does that make sense? And making a little bit more sweetening once we get the MixDown done, that I've found sometimes that I'll reevaluate when I drag it into my mastering suite to see if I might want to do any other work. Then it's a matter of either choosing to go back into the session here and adjust there, or make some minor sweetening adjustments in the mastering suite or wherever you might be mastering your production. So I really hope you enjoyed this master series on getting a good mix done. And if you are going to take it all the way, that next we are going to work on mastering it, and then we're going to put together a distribution package after that, so that we have a completed mastered project to send to as a package that can go to any type of anywhere. Does that make sense? Whether it's Sony or Warner or MGM or anybody, that you can have a full complete package that's done and ready to go for your album or whatever, that's a complete thing. So without lack of better words, you've got a complete package to send to wherever you want. So I really hope you enjoyed this master series. I hope you enjoyed this group processing. I hope I made it as simple as possible to try to show you some of the most basic things you need to be dealing with and thinking about to come out with a really good production. And really remember the things that I told you while we're going through this master series up to this point before we get into mastering, so that you can do a really good job in your production and come out with some really nice stuff. Peace, hope, love. I hope you enjoyed this series, and I'll see you in the next video when we get into mastering.